Hi everyone, sorry I am technically challenged. For some reason, my camera stopped working. So here we are, a few minutes late, but here we are. So welcome to our discussion of season 2, episode 3 of Wheel of Time. We are going to be talking about the differences between the show and the book. And I am joined by Christopher Nava, who's been generous to give his time to do these chats with me. I want to just preface this and say, if you're liking the show, that's great. This might not be the live stream for you. So heads up, that's just putting that out there in the universe. But wanted to get that out of the way. So as I usually ask you, what did you rate this episode on a scale of 10?
So the good news is for maybe some viewers, is I actually thought this was a pretty good episode.
Okay.
I thought we were actually kind of getting back on track a little bit with the source material. Yes, there's still a lot of changes, and I think it's, and we've talked about this, we are accepting things that are going to change for TV adaptation comparative to the book material. It's just what it is. And we've accepted that. What we don't really like, I think, is when they change characters like 180. We kind of like our characters to kind of remain the same from what they are presented in the books. And that's kind of where I also, where a lot of these episodes that don't work for us come from. But this one I thought was really, all in all, pretty decent. I mean, I think there was a lot of book material here, and I do still have some issues with locations of our characters, but it is what it is. So I try to come with this little open mind. So I gave this one a 7.
Okay, that's generous. I was in the realm of a 5.5 to a 6. So definitely an improvement. Yes, that's good for me. Definitely an improvement on the first two. Yeah. This is a very Nynaeve heavy episode. So there was that for me. For people that love Nynaeve, might have been easier for them this episode. But I think the actress Zoe Robbins, who plays Nynaeve, does a very good job. So that helped with a lot of the stuff for me in this episode. But the start of the episode isn't a cold open. We don't have that this episode. And it is when they're in front of the Tiangirls, however you want to say that. And Nynaeve is being given instruction for her test. So I was really pleased with this scene, because the thing was is that they had released this clip right before the season started, but they cut it off before the most important line. And I was curious as to whether or not they were going to include it. And the way back will come but once was highly important in the book. So I was very, very pleased to see that that was kept in this speech, and that it was iterated more than one time, because it needed to be iterated more than one time. But the thing that I didn't love about this scene is that Leandrin's there, and there's a lot of Leandrin going on. And I feel like that's weird, because after the first season, I really liked that they were giving Leandrin more screen time. And now I'm like, okay. But what did you think of our opening scene?
Yeah, absolutely. I gave this a check, this opening theme. So that's a green light for me. I liked technical wise, I think I envisioned in my head a little more of a grander room for this thing, because it's such a big thing. But if it is if these Tingriel are located in, they are explained that they are located in a lower depth, so maybe it is a smaller room. I just expected maybe a little more grand. I expected more Aes Sedai to be present for this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think
in the book, isn't it 3?
I think in the book, 2 people have to work one of the gates. 2 people each have to work the gate. And I think initially it was a more private thing, but I think when she gets out of the third one, there's like a whole bunch, including the ambulance seat there present, for kind of her acceptance in a way. So yeah, like I said, I expected a few more Aes Sedai. A Leandrin again, of course.
Yeah.
Shiriam was expected. I think she was there in the books. I'm not sure about Leanne. But since the Emlyn seat was there, I'm sure Leanne was present as well.
I thought Leanne was there in the book.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah. So I love that they did include somebody that we don't see too often. So it was nice to see another Aes Sedai present there.
Yes, I
but
also,
like you said, it is like a lot of Leandrin.
Yeah.
But I mean, she's kind of taken upon herself to do all this.
Yes.
Interest in Nynaeve, so I guess it does make sense for her there. Yeah, the two past and present. Now, I think the past, you read it a little recently than I did, so
Last
I'm not
month,
sure.
yeah.
I'm not sure what the past images were for her in the book. I didn't mind this version with her and her parents and her parents getting killed and all that.
Yeah.
So I didn't mind this.
This was definitely a change because the first test, I'm going to refer to them as tests because in my mind they're like a trial or test.
Right. Yeah.
The first one is a maze, if I recall correctly. And in that maze, she sees a Forsaken.
Okay.
And it makes sense to me that they changed this because the fact that we've taken such a step back from incorporating the Forsaken into the story in the same way because we didn't have them at the end of season 1.
Right.
So that to me kind of makes sense. And the fact that they had already alluded to this scene where she tells Lan the last thing her parents said to her, and then they have that conversation about what it means in the old tongue and all that kind of stuff. So this I thought was a good change. But the thing that I thought was most interesting about it is when she kind of wakes up in it, I was like, oh, her hair's not in a braid. And I was like, that's interesting. And then you realize she's a child. And I was like, okay, I get that now. So that was different.
I like the past, present, future aspect they used in this aspect of her testing.
Yeah.
I know in the present, when she goes through the present gate, she is replaced by another wisdom. In the books, I believe it's Denise Kroger or something. She comes
something like that, yeah.
Yeah, she comes from one of the other villages. She's a really intense woman.
Yes, and not very good at her job.
Yeah, and not very good at job. Here they replaced her with Matt's mom, which is fine. We already had her established.
Yeah,
I'm okay with the change. I like that we got Tam again. That was pretty cool.
That was a nice touch. Yeah.
So I did like her new aspects to these tests. So yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
Before we talk about the third one, though, because that comes a bit later, I want to get a little bit more into some of the stuff. But yeah, this is a good point. A change is that in the book, you go in completely naked, and they changed that for the show, which I think is appropriate because we don't need to see that in the show.
Yeah, so yeah, I was glad. I think it was just a Robert Jordan thing. I think having just her underclothes on was perfectly acceptable, kind of thing.
Yes. So the one thing about the second vision that it irked me slightly, it's such like a real world thing, and I think this is having just us lived through a pandemic. Tam is covered in boils basically and like touches Nynaeve's hand, and I'm like, don't touch her. Let's not spread this to more people. Self-quarantine, Tam, not touching other people. So that was a little.
I get that. I was kind of thinking the same thing, and I'm like, well, it's the Middle Ages. They didn't really have sanitary gloves or
exactly. Like that, and when she comes out of that second test, she starts blaming everyone around her that it's their fault, basically, that like she can't go back and all that kind of stuff, which is appropriate for her character. And in the book, I remember her feeling very frustrated that she couldn't go back because it felt very real to her that something was going on in the Two Rivers and she needed to go back to that. So all of that really was fine. And that was good. And then we get into the third test, and that is complicated. And I thought that it was interesting that it took 20 minutes of her testing before we got to like our intro type thing. But I'm trying to look at my notes here. Yeah, so they had a good fake out with the third test. I mean, if you're paying close enough attention, I feel like you're like, okay, the arch hasn't appeared, so the test is still going on.
Mm-hmm.
But
I kind of fell for it. I fell for it.
I mean, I thought it was well done.
And I think that was the point. I do give credit to the writers. You know, they want to keep us readers kind of on our toes as well, that things aren't gonna be the way things play out. And now these kind of fake outs I appreciate.
Yeah, these are good.
I did give them credit for doing this. The rave where she's a red sister and the flashes. I was at first like, what are they doing here?
Yeah, initially I thought the same thing. I was like, we've gone a different way here.
Where she's like at some underground rave. Yeah, but I think it was odd that, you know, she was having a nightmare of being a red sister kind of thing too.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, that's fine. And then I want to circle back really quick. I forgot to make this note. I did like I wanted to iterate what you said about, I'm glad they were really adamant. I'm glad Sherry M gave the whole speech about the gates, the way that it comes back but once. I remember reading this the first time and what it impacted on me it was. And and I liked the way Robert Jordan wrote that, where it was, as she's living her scene, that it was like iterated a couple times. Even though the gate hadn't come yet, she keeps reading that. They did eliminate the be steadfast. I'm okay with that. The way that comes but once is just as impactful.
I think so.
But and then she and then they're doing the whole where she's just leaving the tower, and I'm like, I was getting a little nervous. I was like, what is going on here?
You're sitting there going, well, and here was the end of this decent episode.
And I'm like, and I know she's a Wilder in the books too, and she's not at all. She's all against not being really a full Aes Sedai officially, but I'm like, you know. So it was a good fake out, you know. And then I'm glad that they ended with the image of the gate still there and then it fades away, and I was like, okay, pretty cool. But then we're like, okay, she's still in there.
Still in it. And I mean, this is where we get a slight deviation from the book, in the sense that the flicker that happens for the gate isn't really noticed by the Aes Sedai that are waiting for her outside of her test. And the amount of time that lapses is so much smaller in the book. No one was sitting there contemplating the fact that they thought Nynaeve had died. But I want to get back to that in a little bit, because there's more to say on that. But I paused it, like you said, when they got to, because now it's 20 minutes in and we have our little wheel spinning and the episode is now starting. And we see that the Shan Chen are there. We're there. I pause it and it says it's Atuan's Mill. And then it says Tommenhead right there. I was like, okay, so like, are we going to be keeping Perrin in this geographical location then probably for the rest of the season? That seems likely, I guess. But then at the end of the episode, they're moving him. So I don't really know. But one of the things for me, I really hate the costuming for the Shan Chen. I don't like it at all. I really wish this is something that would have been more akin to the books. Specifically for the casters, like the slave, the girls.
We talked about this last week with they look like they have a baby pacifier in their mouth kind of thing. I'm not a big fan of that look. I think they could have gone away with, you know, maybe like a band around the face if they're going to cover their mouths. Just the thing where they look like little babies is just, and I don't know if that's part of the, because I know they like to treat their domain like babies and like children. So maybe that's kind of where they took that in a literal sense. The helmets, I was just going to bring that up.
I also hate them.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. I know that they're going for the insects. There were supposed to be more insectoid kind of thing helmets, from what I understand.
It feels too skeletal.
Yeah, it's a little too skeletal. Maybe they were afraid they were going to be too silly when they designed them.
I don't
with
know,
the insects, but
yeah,
I mean, it's a choice. Not the biggest fan. I thought they did a good job. I do think they do a good job with
Lady Staroth.
I think
she's the only one of the bunch that I'm like, okay, this is feasible.
Yeah. And I didn't mind her aide looking pretty, unique.
I didn't love it. The copper thing again was a little bit weird to me, but
it seems impractical, but
very. But their nails are also highly impractical. So I mean, yes.
No, I did give a check mark to the nail flickering. I did like the way she doesn't talk to her underlings directly. So and that was in the book. She uses hand gestures because that's their caste system. They don't talk directly to anybody who's like underneath them or anything like that. I thought that was a very good choice. The domain was it's hard to take. It was just hard to take it seriously. The scene where she's picking out girls who can channel with that thing in her mouth.
Yeah, I know. It takes it down the severity. I feel like I almost wish that if they wanted to go with something that heavily emphasizes the fact that they can't speak, make it look as if weaving is happening like around their mouth or something, that they are physically unable to talk, or make it something else that doesn't look like a pacifier for a child. So yeah, I wish that would have been different, but it is what it is. But this is the first time in the show that the Shan Chen are actually named. So that's good, finally, that we have an established name for these people. Thought that was good. So this then brings us to a really big change, and that is Uno. So how did you feel about Uno?
I mean, I get it. They're going for shock factor. They're going for a little bit of a it's part of keeping us on our, toes and all that. I know if you watch the little after shows, they're like 5 minutes long.
I have, yes.
The writers said they wanted pretty much that. They wanted to take a beloved character. You were getting to know them and, have that moment. And yeah, I'm not a fan of Uno dying, honestly. I don't. I know they're trying to go for a darker theme and to show the violence, but that's what the Domain are for. That is a violent act of
very much.
And that's going to show up later when, when things happen to our main cast, especially our girls. So we know they're not great people. I wasn't a fan of this. This was the only big X for me on this episode. This really took it down for me. Doing Uno.
It feels like it's one of those moments where they're really trying to be Game of Thrones, and it's a shock value thing rather than a plot necessity thing. Because obviously we have other people there that are important later on. Masema is, I would argue, probably the biggest one, because Ingtar, as we know, has his dark friend plot line, but that's resolved really by the end of the Great Hunt. So you got to kind of keep Ingtar for a little while longer, and I see that you're going to keep Masema alive, because if you're going to do the whole plot line of what Masema's story should be, but I don't think anyone needed to die in this scene particularly. Like, that just was my feeling. I honestly don't think that anyone needed to. I feel like had they done the enslavement properly of the channelers, that would have been enough for it to show how dangerous this is.
Yeah. And that's the same way I feel too. I think we've already proven, yes, you can make a giant tidal wave at the end of the season 1. I don't know. Yeah, this was an unnecessary thing for me. I was in the book. you hate the Shan Chen immediately as soon as you know what they do to how they treat, women channelers, just the way they treat people that they're less than. They don't even speak to them, unless unless you're equal or higher, a higher caste. We know. I mean, it's written that way. So to just randomly kill, characters like this, it's just like you said, just that Game of Thrones moment. But it didn't get executed very well for me.
Agreed. In regards to this comment, I don't know, but I also found that very odd, that they took off their helmet. That seemed a little out of character. Is there something in the books that says she could? Yeah, I don't recall that ever being a thing, honestly. They are very caste-based and they have very strict orders, is generally how I always read them, and no one really steps out of line. So that did feel out of place. I mean, it was built into the, that she was in an extra. But I do think that we could identify her as a distinct character. So, I mean, it might be that she's someone going forward in the season that is going to have more of a role. I think that will probably be what it is, just so they have someone to be fearful of other than Ishmael and Lady Sarath.
Right. Yeah. I think she was a little too young to be some of the other team members, like a hidden, like, undercover Tuon, or who's going to be the new Empress, or even Semiraj. But so I don't think it would be either of them. So I don't know who that was. I think
I'll be interested to see if we get more of a sense as to who this character is.
So yeah, I still struggle with this. I still struggle with the Shan Chen. I did like that we got a little more development with them. But the Uno dying is just didn't work for me, and it took me out. And the first time I watched this episode, I dwelt on it almost the whole episode. and so thankfully I watched this episode again.
But
it was I would have probably ranked this episode a little lower, the first, like you, for probably along the same scale. The second watch through really helped me to raise the bar. But that's all I got.
I'm only going to say it once for this episode, but Perrin's mouth during this whole thing was wide open and was catching flies. So that's my comment for this episode on Perrin. But
I'm gonna save it for later. I'll reiterate it later.
Rand and Logain is what we then jump to. Okay. I feel like Logain at this point seems way more coherent than he should. Logain, when he's in the tower after recently being cut off from the source, is a shell of himself. And this Logain is highly manipulative. His wit seems like it's 100% there. His intelligence doesn't feel like it's taken any kind of hit. The only real difference, it seems like, is that he can't channel. And I feel like that kind of takes away some of the dynamic of what Logain was dealing with, because Logain still, as we know, later on has things happen, right? And has certain abilities, like he's able to kind of pin out ta'veren and all these types of things that Logain can do fine. But I thought it was really important in the books to show how much of a shell he was of himself, to understand the severity of stilling. And I'm kind of sad that we're not seeing that for Logain's perspective. But I do still like this version of Logain that we're seeing.
I'm right with you. A big shout out, of course, to the actor who's playing Logain. I think he does a good job with kind of still, I think it's like he's playing it with like still like a lingering mix of having a bit of madness to him, I think. And I think there is a bit of a hysteria to him that he's, still not sure how he feels yet. I do feel like it is not book Logain, of course. I agree that in the book he's just sitting there. I remember reading about the scene in Tarvalin where he's just kind of sitting there and Min's sitting with him and he's just kind of has his head down. He's not saying anything. He's a little down, but I guess I didn't mind the change. And I think, like I said, I think credit goes to the actor.
Oh, he's great. Yeah, he's a fantastic actor. I really do like him. And I mean, like what people are saying here, Patrick, like he's got a strong self-core. I don't disagree. I just feel like for the amount of emphasis that's been placed on Red Aja in our story and what Red Aja do, that we're not really seeing the full ramifications of that. And I feel like also if we were to have Rand and Logain interact where Logain is highly depressed, it would up the stakes for Rand with knowing that this is what happens and will happen to me if I'm caught by Red Aja type thing. I don't know. This is just how I felt when watching it. I was like, I see what they're doing here. I get it. But I also would have liked to have maybe this dynamic because it would have impacted Rand more. And I think that would have helped with the Rand storyline as well.
I think there's like the moments, the pauses between the scene, how this scene is played out, where he does look broken. And again, it's not all the way through. It is when he starts talking and he talks about, and he does seem very lively when he talks. But there is like, I think those pauses where he's looking down, he's like just kind of like going through the motions of eating whatever the food is. And I do appreciate that. Yeah, I would have maybe liked to seen him a little more downtrodden, more like unresponsive to Rand. But maybe that's why he was a little more lively, because he knows Rand can channel. He states that himself. So I think that's why maybe there was, maybe seeing Rand is what pulled him out a little bit. Because if it's anything like getting still, maybe he's figuring out there might be a purpose for him yet. And if it's like stilling for women, if women can find a purpose, they can learn to live.
Right.
So that's kind of the way I see it. But yeah.
I did find that there was more of the book Logain when he was given the wine, because he's like continuously pouring and like he doesn't seem fully there. And I was like, okay, this is better. But that happens later. So we'll get to that. Bran says he wants to learn how to control it, which like poor Rand, because that's good luck with that. But the thing that I thought was really good actually is that when they then go to the town square, we see a Gleeman, and that's the type of Gleeman cloak that Tom Maryland should have been wearing in season 1. And I was so happy to see a Gleeman that actually looked like a Gleeman, and that felt appropriate. Of course, Gleeman, Tom himself even talks about how he has all these stories about the horn, but he would like to have more stories about the horn. So this is something that I thought was a nice little adage that we had in this scene. Selene, I think the actress is very good. I said it last episode, but aesthetically, I think she's perfect. Definitely has
she has an exotic look to her,
very much
a unique look, this actress.
Yeah.
And I think it works with the Lanfear character. It does give her that, like you said, otherworldly character. And I notice what the production has done really well with her. Most of her scenes are either at night, which she is associated with the moon, when there is, and they always have like the moon shining on her face. With this scene, it was during the day. But I think she's a little bit in the shadow of the inn or tavern, and there is still kind of like a beam of light on her. during this, and I think it's really cool the way. I think this is very intentional on the production, and I liked it. I think it was cool, and like you said, I did like the Gleeman touch. This was a check for me. I was like, it was a nice little scene. I would have preferred that to be Tom himself, but that's
me
okay.
Too.
And we still might see Tom in the future. We're still in Kyrene, so that's a good sign. I like that we got a little bit of exposition as well here about the horn. I'm glad somebody is talking more about the horn.
Yeah. I mean, Daniel, I love the guy that plays Tom Maryland also because he's another Last Kingdom actor. And I said this last episode, guys, go watch Last Kingdom if you haven't watched it. But he's the villain in that, and he's excellent. So highly, highly, highly recommend. So Sharon, when we go back to the White Tower, is so unfeeling. And I feel like the way that they are portraying her, she feels more like a red Aja than a blue Aja. But I'm like, maybe it's just they're trying to show that when you've been in the White Tower long enough, you kind of lose sentimentality and all of that. But telling Egwene that know that the pain will pass seems very just cold and unloving. And like she says at the end, you know, like basically like take all the time you need, but it's like that's not helpful. So I found this was a little out of place. I mean, she's old, and I get that.
That's,
you know,
well,
that's
no, that's
fine.
Yeah.
But
she's
when you're
presented a lot older in the show.
Yes, but when your job is being in charge of novices who are young, I'm like, maybe we're more like Alana, where it's a bit more we can relate to them as opposed to just straight up being like, your friend's dead, you'll be fine. So that was my little take on.
I did like a few of the things that Elaine mentioned here. She was just showing off Paladina. So, oh my
That's
God.
hilarious, Daniel.
That's a laugh. Yeah, she doesn't have the red curly hair in this one, but
yeah.
But Elaine here, like I mentioned, I like how she adds her. She likes to tell Egwene what she knows.
Yeah.
And the actress does a great job.
I think she's so good.
It's funny how annoying it is in the books, but how funny it is on the show.
TV. Yeah.
And I can accept it on TV. This actress does a really good job without being annoying and a know-it-all, but just kind of like saying, no, Egwene, that's not how it works, you know, kind of thing.
Yes. I like Elaine. And also it's interesting because Elaine in the show they're using more as an informational piece because Maureen's not there for Egwene. That Elaine has grown up around Aes Sedai. She's grown up with the knowledge of the White Tower and Tar Valon. So they're using her in that way, and I'm fine with it. I think it's good.
Yeah.
And also
it works really well.
Yeah, they've matured.
It's her character too. It's a
yes, but she comes across as substantially more mature than
and
Egwene
I think that's why I like her more.
Yes,
than I do in the book. Yeah.
So I'm fine with that. But we're then seeing Leandrin and Matt again. So this is more Leandrin in this, and she, of course. This is where we kind of get into this, well, I can't lie type thing. And I'm like, but you kind of can because you're a Black Aja. So, you know, you can. But I feel weird about this scene in the sense that of what comes from it. The actual scene itself for me was fine, but the outcome of it was not fine for me.
So I think I'm trying to understand Leandrin's motivation, knowing what she is as Black Aja. And I think it really comes down to she wants to use Nynaeve as a tool for the Black One, of course. And I think she can utilize Nynaeve's hatred for the Aes Sedai as a tool. And I think she really feels a loss for Nynaeve here. I think she generally does.
Do you?
I do. Part of me does, but I'll get back to. But when the door closes to Nynaeve and she thinks she's dead, I mean, she was visually upset about that. Losing that, but I think it's not so much as Nynaeve as a person, but more as like an instrument that she can utilize and control. I think we got a little more book accurate with how vicious Liandrin can be when she's just like raking Matt over, like, you are nothing, you are a piece of I don't know what Moraine sees in you. You are a piece of dirt.
You would have abandoned your friends. You would do it again. Yeah.
I felt like this is a little. I actually kind of like this scene, and like I said, I think it's because it's Matt. I still feel like we're not getting enough Matt.
We're not. But, no, we're
not. I liked it.
Well, in regards to this, I don't think she technically lied because I think she thought Nynaeve was dead. So I don't think that's a lie in that regard. But the thing that irked me most with Liandrin in this episode wasn't something that Liandrin did. It was what Egwene did, because Egwene would never speak to a superior of any kind in that way.
I had an X on that too. I was like, that was
she wasn't a sister, but she was in the process of becoming a sister. So I think that's why it's referenced in that way. But yeah. It's just that scene with Egwene and Liandrin felt so out of place and so out of character. I was like, for both people, I was like, this just doesn't, no, this would never ever happen.
No, because up until when they get to Tanchico or Toman Head or wherever, they had utmost trust in Liandrin and respect. You know, they probably didn't care for her being in Haraja, but they did have respect for her and trust enough to, follow her into, to get to Toman Head. So to me that that took away that, because now in this version, Egwene has zero trust for Liandrin.
Yes.
But it just goes to show, sometimes when you change things, it doesn't play really well to and this was
not 100%. No. So one of the things that was a little homage to the Great Hunt is the dinner party that Rand and Selene kind of break into. Rand was being paraded to all these different dinner parties in the book. The coat that they got him was a nice homage to the cover of the Great Hunt, the original cover. So I thought that was a good little touch that they did there. And the scenes of like understanding that there's games being played, I thought that was appropriate because this is something that definitely did happen. Showing that Rand is still pretty naive and all of that kind of stuff. So I thought that was good.
I love that we are playing the game of houses here. Rand is pretty new to it. Did it happen in book 2 where he started getting involved with the politics of I did make a note, and I wanted to ask you because I wasn't too sure if this was too early, because I know it happens a lot when he starts getting the nations together. And I like the fact that tossing the invitation was like, oh, everything's a scandal in the game of houses, or what is he doing? And I like that. So I want to point out something really quick here on this. And I don't know if this is going to be something of import or it's just a fun fact. It's kind of like my fun fact. Again, when you pause the video on this, he is speaking to Lady Avir. And according to the Wheel of Time Companion, that is Moraine's older sister.
Huh. Yeah. Interesting.
Because that's Moraine's nation where she's from.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. So I'm wondering if, and that actress is actually pretty popular. She's been in other things too. So
she's in Rome. That's what I know her from.
Yeah,
she's Sevilla from Rome. Yeah.
There was
but she's been in a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if they are going to use her a little more. That seemed like a very small scene for that actress.
Yeah, I would like if they did because she is very good.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely loved the whole introduction of Game of Houses, and Rand doesn't know, he doesn't want to play, he doesn't understand it, but what he's doing is like causing an uproar. I think so it was really great. I liked it. It was a nice touch.
Yeah.
And definitely I feel like this is the one thing I want to mention here though is, and not to bring down a cool scene, but I feel like Rand is still naive to the world at this point.
Very much.
But now I feel like he's a little accustomed to everything in the world already, especially noble houses. And it seems like he's more worldly than he should be right now.
A little, but I feel like I can justify that with the fact.
But I forget that there are time jumps too. There are time jumps. I guess.
I think it's more so for me that Selene is telling him these things. Like that's kind of how I look at it. I'm like, she's manipulating him. She's telling him what she wants him to know and that kind of stuff. So
I just wanted your opinion on that. Okay, good point.
Yeah, I think that's probably what it is.
At first, I thought it might have been too soon for him to just be like able to like immerse himself into this kind of world, but.
I feel like in The Great Hunt, it happens relatively quickly. He keeps getting invited to dinner, and the burning of the invitation is something that does happen in the book. It's just the context behind it is different because they go to a party of someone. They end up then going to a party of someone who is a dark friend and all kinds of stuff, which is a very good scene in the book. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I think I vaguely remember that. It's been a little bit for me in the Great Hunt.
So we see that Rand gets the wine. He leaves Selene, aka Lanfear, and goes back to Logain. This is where Logain, I feel like, shows a bit more of the characteristics that I would like to see from him. So that's good. He says to him that you can't control it. It's just going to come out at some point, which is very appropriate. So I'm fine with this. This whole scene to me is good. The thing that I do find interesting is Logain saying he can hear Luz. And I'm like, you shouldn't be able to hear Luz. I think you hear the madness. Rand is going to hear Luz, but it's not going to be you. So I do think that was interesting. But we did see right in the 4th episode of the 1st season where when Logain is channeling, how he has those figures that are whispering to him. So I kind of wonder if he thought that one of those figures was Luz. And that if he can in fact still hear him or hear that.
I think it's his opinion that he hears Luz. It's just just a random voice because he thought himself he was the Dragon Reborn. So he assumed that voice speaking to him was Luz, but I don't think it is actually him.
I agree. I don't think it is either. So we then go back to the tower and we're back with Mat. And this is where my issue from this comes from, specifically because of the fact that in The Dragon Reborn, the girls treat Mat terribly. And Mat still goes out of his way to make sure that they are okay. So with him seeing Egwene crying in that courtyard, Book Mat would never just leave, ever. He would go in and 100% make sure she's okay, and then he would leave. So didn't love that.
Yep, it was that was the other big X I had as well, because again, we're going back to fine if you want to change things altogether, but changing entire character, that I don't know. So that bothered me too. I was really mad to see that he sees her. I was so waiting for some sort of like, welcome back, kind of thing with those two, especially because we haven't had a Egwene Mat interaction yet, and we did not get that. So that, and then later he just leaves. So I'm just like, come on, Matt. That made me really mad. Yeah,
Exactly. This
I
is
agree.
correct. He would
Alden,
100% do everything in his power to help Egwene.
yeah, that
So, yeah.
definitely was not book accurate. And the fact that he even left, I think he would have. I was saying, okay, well, he's given the option to stay or leave. He's given the option to leave, but I think he would have stayed, seeing Egwene that way. And then we find out he's just takes off with Min. And
so I do like the Min Matt pairing.
yeah, I do too. I
I'm
do
good with
too.
that, but I don't like this scenario of the fact that Min is working for Leandrin. I don't like it.
Yeah, I didn't like that either.
Yeah.
I hope they don't change this character entirely and make her a dark friend. I hope this is just some sort of like blackmail-ish kind of thing with Min and Leandrin. I mean, it's clear they're making this Min a little more, a survivalist and trying to just look out for herself kind of thing. She left Faldera without staying to fight or anything like that. And she's not really a fighter anyway, but and then this whole thing. So I wasn't a big fan of that. I love Matt and Min together. I just don't see Matt abandoning Egwene.
No, I don't either. And like, you're saying that Matt in the second book wouldn't have left. Matt in the second book is dealing with a lot. Like, he realizes that his life is on a clock, and
he tries repeatedly to warn the girls, stop the girls from doing anything, crazy or spontaneous, and they're always like shutting the door on him. And so exactly. I feel like he would still do what he can to defend the girls.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't love that, but I am curious to see
where are they going? Where they're going from there.
Yeah. I assume they're gonna have to end up at Falma somehow. But I'm curious to see why that is. He took him in a different direction for book 3 because he's finally untethered to the dagger, is my understanding. Like, that's what it is. So, but that was my reading on it. So we then have the scene with Perrin and Ishmael, and I was confused by this initially. I was like, where is Elias? And I was noticing that too earlier in the episode with the Shan Chen. I was like, okay, Elias isn't here. So that's interesting. And then I'm slightly frustrated with the Perrin storyline because we should know so much more by this point than we do. Perrin should know so much more at this point than he does. And the fact that Ishmael is the one that's telling him this, I'm like, okay. So I'm a little thrown with that, but Elias does come back into the scene at the end, and he's going to be off with the wolves now. So do we think that was Hopper that
Hopper him? or Dapple, the wolf pack leader? One of the two. I think one of the two wolves. We haven't seen an actual wolf die yet, so we haven't seen. So that would be Hopper when that happens. So we can start getting into these wolf dreams, which. I'm hoping this of what's going on with Perrin right now, but they're tying so much in with Perrin right now. They're tying in the Shan Chen's plot line, and they're tying in
the Horn, Shan Chen, the wolves,
and the Shan Chen,
Ishmael.
And we haven't gotten to what his
vision thing is that he can do.
Superpower yet is.
Yeah.
So
which
it's like Perrin's getting all these like storylines. So I want the wolf thing. So I was appreciative that we're touching on it with Ishmael, which was, like you said, an odd choice. But I yeah, I hope now that he's with the wolves, this happens. I guess my point is, I was, you made Elias the tracker. They've been with Elias for months on end, tracking Pat and Fane, which is another Perrin plot line. So I guess my question is, I would think he would have learned all that from Elias during these months that they were traveling, but we didn't get any of that.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope that he would have said something, but I guess no. So there's that. But I did not like the killing of the wolves that you could hear outside. I hate animal death in all things.
I know.
I had a really
I know it
hard time
happened.
with
I know
that.
it happens because it happens. Wolves get killed in the books. But,
I mean, yes,
but yes, it's tough.
It made me
Always tough to watch.
uncomfortable.
At least it was like you didn't see it happen. You just saw that. Yeah.
But there's that, and then we see that Leandrin and Min are working together. We've talked about that. But when we go back to the tower, we see that Egwene has made her way to the room, which I think is interesting because, like, who showed her the way there? And she's trying really hard to open the portals, the gates, whatever. Elaine is once again of sound mind and opinion and is kind of trying to instruct her. So that was fine, but I did like that we finally then jumped back into Nynaeve's vision because we needed to get back to the vision. And this was pretty close to the book. So the thing that was different is that in the vision in the book, when she jumps through, they're already married and they already have kids. So they kind of just jumped ahead a little bit. And we got more of the build up with that. And yes, I did notice that. I was wondering where they were last episode, and I was happy to see that this episode. But I thought her final scene was good. Like the final test scene was good overall. Yep. I was okay with it.
Yep. Real quick back to Egwene. I agree. I did have a question mark on, like, okay, Nynaeve didn't know where this room was, because there was like, where are you taking me kind of thing. And Egwene suddenly knows where it. Maybe she got the information from Elaine. Maybe Elaine has a map of of the tower. But back to Nynaeve. Yes, really loved this whole end scene. That this is, again, like, for Nynaeve lovers like me, I think this was just really strong scene. It took away a little bit from that constantly angry, constantly trying to antagonize the people around her, and this gave her a little bit of vulnerability, which I love. I like the inclusion of Perrin and Matt even in this future. Matt looks like a noble, and I thought that was a funny touch. And Perrin's running around with his mouth open, chasing, scaring the crap.
Hasn't changed at all.
Scaring the crap out of her daughter.
Exactly.
So, but I still loved it. And then Lan, just being Lan. And the only thing I think. This is a little nitpicky, but I think she shouldn't know that she can't grab her daughter to take her in through the gate. And I think because that was the pain of always leaving the gates, was not being able to take anything with you. And that would have included her daughter. So, but I think in this case I allowed it because I think it was an impact when she came out and she's just like
holding nothing,
holding nothing. And I think that was a good touch. I think that was a pretty cool way to like, really, you want the impact of abandoning all your loved ones and running through. I think it would have been better if Lan was still alive, to give her a little more reason to want to, that last minute of hesitation of wanting to stay. Having him still alive with a chance to live would have been more impactful. Everybody was dead anyway. So it was easy to leave the gate. So I think it would have been, because I think in the book, it was like he's screaming at her, "Don't leave me, don't leave me," kind of thing. So it would have been better, I think, if one of them, somebody was still alive there. But yeah, I still.
And I guess that's the daughter, right? It's the daughter still alive in this scenario, so I guess
yeah. But she's trying to take her with her, so I think,
which I mean, like as a mother, I 100% relate
see
to.
that.
So when I saw that scene, I was like, when she came through the thing, I was like, oh, like it was probably
I can imagine.
First Nynaeve moment where I was like, relatable. So that for me was good as someone who doesn't love Nynaeve's character. This for me was good in the sense I'm like, okay, it's appropriate. It's good. And I did think it had that visual effect that they wanted of her coming through with nothing with the blood on her. So I thought that was good.
Yeah. Cool. The one thing I think the one thing we missed was
Rand setting the building on fire.
Rand setting the building on fire. And this is the one moment we finally see a little bit of Lanfear, where she has the strength to like shove him against the door. And like, I think
if you ever leave me again, I'll kill you.
Don't ever leave me again. Although then they start making out. So he's like,
I feel like that's Lanfear though.
Like, but not Rand though. I think Rand would have been like, whoa, what the, what the hell, kind of thing. I don't think he would like respond immediately unless in this version he's all into SMN. It's just like
I mean, I agree. It's one of those things though that in the book, right? Rand is so enchanted by Selene and he doesn't know why. And he keeps feeling that sense of guilt of, well, what about Egwene? And that's fine. So the thing with them is I'm like, I can buy into it because of the fact that it seems enough of the book. But I couldn't tell if it was a dream sequence. That's the thing. I thought
good point, because he does wake up in bed alone. But then and she comes in, kind of back to her Selene, back to a little more of a like a very timid, calmer Timur. But then she's also a master of dreams too, and a manipulator of dreams. So I think I personally think this did, in a sense, happen maybe in the dream world.
That's the thing. I feel like it should have been conveyed better.
Yeah.
But I agree.
But I honestly think it would happen, because that is a very Lanfear moment, with her getting angry that he was not there.
100%. And very threatening. And it's just I could see.
I guess maybe I should reword this by saying I prefer this to be a real thing that happened, because
I would too, honestly, because I like that Lanfear is exhibiting some of that behavior, because she should be. Not necessarily at this point, because at this point in the Great Hunt, we're still kind of going like, I called it off the bat. I was like, that's Lanfear. But I mean, for most, I think you're sitting there going like, okay, who is this?
Because this is the moment I feel like needed to exist. I think it was in the previous episode where they're laying in bed together and Rand's talking about Egwene, and she seemed very lackadaisical about that. And she's like, no, you don't need to be talking about that Fisher girl or that village girl anymore or something. She'd be like insulting Egwene and like getting really angry. Even that early stage, she'd be getting kind of
agreed. But that's our episode. For the most part. So
I this was a lot better for me.
It was better. It still had issues, but was better.
Yeah, it was a lot better. So if they continue in this direction, this might be actually good and a better season. Just looking back, I do think they were progressively getting better. One was just, I just think one was a lot of just like hop, skip, jump, kind of thing. And
so for me,
but this was the strongest.
It's the strongest because Moraine's not in it. And
That's it.
The whole useless plot that they've made for Moraine and Lan didn't dictate this episode. And that's why for me it was the best one.
The one thing I want to say is we know that in the book she does visit Aeolus and Vendine in the book. Yes. It's Vendine in the book. Viren's actually traveling with them with the horn.
Yep.
So I knew they were going to do that because Rosamund Pike is the star of the show. So I knew they were going to have those scenes. I knew that was going to be part of that. And I was going to be very accepting of that. The only part of it I wasn't accepting is her attitude toward Lan. It ruined those episodes for me, those first 2 episodes for me.
Yep.
And it just took away a little bit of that dynamic those two had.
Agreed.
So I agree. I think because she was absent in this episode, I was able to enjoy it a minute.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing that I hated was Uno dying and Min working with Leandra. And I think those 2 big moments that I was like, you know.
Yeah. Overall, I think it's an improvement. I get really frustrated listening to Rafe in the behind the episode things because I don't like what he's saying for upcoming stuff.
Okay. I didn't like when he was talking about when he was definitely talking about Uno. Oh, everybody loves Uno, so you know we're gonna just kill him off. And I'm like, don't that's not how it works. You know, just like I mean you have to I don't know.
It's not only that he said that I think this was in the behind the scenes for episode 2 rather than episode 1, or episode 3, but I could be conflating them. That the show is going to continue to primarily be about the characters around Rand rather than Rand. And I was like,
oh, okay, yeah, I remember that. Okay.
This is problematic because Rand is the dragon and we still don't understand the importance of Rand and what his point is. And I'm like, listen, I know that Rand kind of disappears for times and that's fine. And I mean, even by book 3, there's barely any Rand in the Dragon Reborn. But by book 3, you know the importance of Rand and Rand's perspective. And we don't have that yet in the show. And I'm like, guys, we got to get to this point. Like, what's going on?
Books 4 and 5 are very heavily Rand. And very heavily the creation of his Dragon Rebornness kind of thing. So I think even more so than where he picks up the sword in the Stone of Tyr. Yeah. This is the 4 and 5 is like his really hardcore development, kind of his like passage, if you want to call it. I think it's like a rite of passage is what I call 4 and 5 because of his time he spends. Spoiler for somebody. He goes into the Isle of Waste. Mm-hmm. So I think, and they were another 2 strong entries, especially 4. 4 was really
4 and 5 are what people say are they're usually their top books. So other than 2.
So if they're not going to focus on that, I'll be curious what they focus on.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I feel a little more optimistic.
Patrick, that's okay.
We have still 5 episodes. So
yeah, Patrick, here's the thing. Having the most screen time and words spoken doesn't mean that they're using that screen time and word count properly. And that for me is the main issue. It's the same for Perrin. I'm like, get to the point and let Perrin know what's going on already. So I'm just hoping that they will use that screen time and language appropriately because I feel like in a lot of cases there's been wasted time and not moving the plot forward in the way that it should. But that's me. So I feel like for the next episode, I think from the preview, we see Lanfear, like the summoning of Lanfear type thing.
I think we're kind of getting an origin story. So I think we're going to get that reveal. Spoiler, of course, but I'm sure if you're watching this, you already know. Selene is Lanfear, and she's one of the Forsaken. And I think this is the scene where Ishmael starts probably releasing some of the other Forsaken, maybe.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to primarily focus on Lanfear here, and we're going to see that play out. There was trying to remember. There was not too much else I remember. And I watched this.
That's all I remember too.
I watched this preview twice, so I'm like, I'm just trying to remember. I think there was a scene with the girls talking about going to Falme to rescue Perrin.
Okay.
I think I remember those lines.
I don't remember, but yeah, the main thing I remembered was Lanfear. I was like, okay, Lanfear.
I have this horrible suspicion, but I'm going to try to still remain optimistic. But I just feel like they're just doing something just different with Matt. I just get this weird suspicion he's not going, but I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
It might be that they try to build him up as a douchebag for the season and then redeem him at the very end and he blows the horn, maybe. Like, the main thing for me is Matt needs to be the one to blow the horn. Like, that is what I'm hoping for Matt this season, because I feel like I can't get my hopes too behind what I want for Matt, because it's clear that that's not what's happening. Mm-hmm. So my main hope at this point is just get Matt to the horn. Please get Matt to the horn and let him use it, not just watch someone else use it.
Yeah. There's too much going on with Perrin right now. I feel like it can't. Don't give Perrin something else. I mean, he's already got 4 things on his plate. So
yeah, I agree. The new actor, Donald something. He's very, very good. I like him a lot. So I think that
he's doing a really good job. That, like I said, that whole scene with Leandrin, I really loved it. And his interactions with Min have been fantastic so far.
Yeah,
so,
I agree. Donald Finn. Yeah. Okay. So
Donald
I wasn't
Finn.
too far off. Thank you. But yeah, I'm hopeful that it'll continue to trend upwards. But yeah, overall better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we'll see. I feel like I've been misled by this show before. So who knows? Because last season with episodes 4 and 5, I was like, good. And then
somebody, I forget who I was talking to. I think one of my friends who's not really, they think that they're going to wrap up Falme like late mid-season and then head to the Stone of Tear by the end of the season. I don't think that could happen, but
maybe, but that's rushing a lot of stuff.
That's rushing a lot, but they are combining already parts of 3.
Yeah.
So, but I don't see that happening. But
I mean,
I said I would mention it in the video. So in this,
this is kind of what we've been saying overall, is that had they gone in and said that this is inspired by Wheel of Time, or they've named it something like The Tower and referenced that it was more an adaptation of that, I think that would have been more pleasing to most fans of Wheel of Time, because that seems to be the general consensus.
I don't think so either. I don't think so either, personally.
I think, maybe it's possible. I do think that they need to get to Tear probably before book 4 plot, but
although I'm a little worried we'll get another time jump and we're in Tear episode 1 of season 3.
Yeah, I mean, you never know, honestly. At some points there are gonna have to be time jumps, but I mean, I don't love time jumps in general. I get that sometimes they're necessary, like in the
journey is the best part. In fantasy, the journey is the best part. Yeah.
This is your opinion, though. Like, this is your opinion, and you are entitled to think that the show is good, but other people, obviously, who are book fans, feel that it isn't a very good adaptation. There are a ton of things that go into adapting a book into a series, adapting a book into a film. There's just so much. But I think the thing that most people were hoping for was that it was a truer telling of the books. And there's elements there, but it's not the same.
And I mean, to defend myself on that note too, all open. I'm very open with adaptations. I was even open up to Rings of Power, where I watched the whole thing through.
I did too.
And I guess there are things that I'm open to, even character qualms and quirks changes. But if you're gonna do those changes, make them consistent. Like, I feel like season 1 Moraine is different from season 2 Moraine. Yes, she is stilled, but the relationship between her and Moraine should have never have changed.
Yeah.
And they changed that. And that's the thing I have problems with. It's not so much you're changing things that happen in the book altogether. It's you established that Moraine and Lan are this and will always be this. But then along comes, and I know in the books, Moraine does pass on Lan's bond to Lyanna. He's not a big fan of that, so I'm sure there was some disagreements off book to that. But I want consistency. If you're going to change the characters, keep them that consistency is kind of my thing.
Agreed. And I think a lot of the stuff too is that they're setting up rules and plot, and then they're disregarding it. And I mean,
changing them. Yeah,
they're changing them. I mean, a big example is the fact that Loyal was stabbed. So many of the Shinarans were stabbed, and then we just come back to season 2 and Loyal is fine and all these people are fine, and it's like, we just accept this now and we don't get any explanation. Like, there's a lot of decisions being made, I feel like, that don't have the appropriate follow through on them.
And I agree, and I don't want to comment on them because maybe there'll be a prequel scene where we focus on Padden Fane from the events of Faldera to the present day. Maybe we get that. So I'm trying to be careful on, getting worked up about situations like stabbing, and then suddenly next episode we're all okay. We're not even talking about how we got healed, how we got better. We just carrying on as if nothing happened. And then, issues that I had with season 1 with the healing of getting burned out and all that, it breaks the rules, and you can change the rules. But
so that is what I wanted to talk about earlier when I said make a note of when we come back to Nynaeve's task. So, okay. Because they had that death scene for Nynaeve in the end of episode 8 of season 1, I think it cheapened having a fake out death for her this episode. Had that not happened in episode 8, that would have been much more impactful this episode. I would have legitimately been questioning, had they killed Nynaeve? Mm-hmm. But I don't feel that way anymore because of the fact that they play fast and loose with that kind of thing. It's clear in the show based on that and based on the lack of explanation for the stabbings and stuff like that. So I find it harder to immerse myself in the story in scenes like that, where I'm like, the stakes aren't there for me because I know you guys don't have a hard set of rules that you're playing by here. So that for me was a little bit of frustration in that regard.
Mm-hmm. They can. I'm all for what they feel like they need to change, but keep it consistent with your narrative is kind of where I'm going to go with that. It's don't change the rules you're making in your show.
Yeah.
Oh, poor Nynaeve.
I've had that hope, but okay. So he can confirm that she didn't die. It's fine. Confirm that you can't heal death, but that's not how it came across in the show. The problem was that the makeup that they gave her, girl looks dead. Like, she 100% looks dead. So the fact is that whether or not you shouldn't, as a creator, have to come out after something has aired and explain it. It should be digestible and understandable to a viewer when you put it out. That's the only thing that matters. You do not need supplemental material to understand a TV show, in my opinion. So that, for me, is the problem. Fine. If they want to say that she's alive, then show me that she's somewhat alive. Have her like flick a finger or something like that that indicates that there is not complete death in that scenario, because that's not how it read to me as a viewer at all.
Mm-hmm.
If I have strong feelings about it, if that's not clear.
And again, I feel like they are doing some great things with the show that were not present in the book.
Mm-hmm.
I do like a lot of the character film, and especially with Lan himself. He's a lot more chatty than in the books, and I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with Leandra, and she is getting a lot of screen time, but she does have an important role in this scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm okay with Logain definitely being more in there. I mean, the scene with Ran and Logain, that doesn't happen books later. But I'm okay with it, So I'm very open to adaptations. I'm very open to media. It's just the consistency. Keep things consistent. When you make a rule in your show,
you need to
keep that rule.
I mean, it's not a cop-out. The reality is that most people aren't going searching for supplemental material. That's just the fact of it. If you're a book reader, you might be going and looking for it, or a really hardcore fan, but I don't think that the average person is going to look for that supplemental material. I mean, I watched all that stuff for the most part in season 1, where they added on the bonus content and things like that. I thought the animations that they did with the season 1 accompaniment to the show was a really cool thing. I actually preferred that storytelling more to a lot of what I saw in season 1. But yes, there is a pattern of poor visual communication. I agree with Daniel on this very much so. I'm hoping that that is something that they remedy going forward. I'm hoping that they've learned that lesson from season 1 and the reaction that they garnered from season 1 going forward. Hopefully that would be great, because if this is to be an 8-season show, I'm hoping that we will start to have some established rules that we stick to going forward. I think that will be helpful for a lot of people that are fans of the original source material. I mean, I don't know. I don't think they should stop. Definitely not.
Mm-hmm.
But I do wonder, because I've seen a lot of people discussing the fact that Loyal stabbing hasn't been acknowledged. And I almost do wish that that would have been acknowledged in some way, shape, or form in an episode. But like Chris said, it might be coming. So I'm going to hold off my feeling on that completely until the end of the season. But I'm hoping going forward, we won't need any kind of retcon adjusting scenarios. But that's
and we took, and in our defense, we took into consideration COVID and the fact that they were limited on what they could do those last 2 episodes. I think we kind of took that into factor when we were talking about those episodes too.
Yeah, I agree. So for episode 4, we will be back on Friday, which is release day. We'll be doing 8:00 Eastern time for that episode. So if you would like to join us, please try to watch the episode before you do, because we will obviously be talking about it. But thank you for joining us.
Thank you for your comments.
We love having varied comments. I am so happy that the show is working for some people. I get that it doesn't work for everybody. I'm in that middle ground. I feel like sometimes it does work for me, other times it doesn't.
I wanted to continue to do well.
Yes, absolutely.
I want to see the end to this, even if it's something different from the books. I want to see the end. Yeah,
absolutely. Adaptations can be great, because I'm planning on doing a video on this for my channel, because I feel like there are some adaptations that change the material, the original material, but are still fantastic in both mediums.
I'm gonna probably hold off until the end of this season before I was thinking of doing a video too, just when probably, but not until this season's wrapped up.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. Thank you for joining.
No, we appreciate it.
Honestly, we appreciate it. We are happy to be a voice for both sides.
I like opposing views to this. So I think we do come, sometimes I'll admit, I think we do come off bitter that it's not, you know, I grew up with these stories when in my teens. So because I'm a little older. So I grew up with these. You know, when you have this passion for this series, you want to see everything. Where's this? Where's that? Where's this? You know?
Absolutely. And I mean, that's part of it as being, you know, if you're a super fan or a fan in general, we become so attached to certain plot points, certain characters, because they resonated with us in such a fundamental way. And it can be heartbreaking when you hear an adaptation is happening of your favorite thing and then it's not there, or they've taken it and they've gone in a way that you feel is worse than what was actually there. So, I mean, I get it. I agree. Christopher does look like he's only, you know, very young. So I can confirm he's told me his age and I do not believe him. So it's a conversation that we've had. But once again, thank you all for joining us. Honestly, we really do appreciate it. If you're watching this on the replay, let us know in the comments down below what you thought of the episode. And we hope to see you all on Friday.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
Have a good night.